It's time for the Mercedes GLC EQ versus the BMW iX3, the top hitters in this segment here at the moment. We're going to find out efficiency, real-world range, and also charging. We'll do concise tests of every segment and tell you what you need to know and which one would we actually pick. Now we have to talk about the batteries, because that's a huge difference indeed. The iX3 comes with 108.7 kilowatt hours net battery, and it's the electric charging flap right here, 11 or 22 kilowatt AC, and then up to 400 kilowatt DC, 21 minutes, 10 to 80% state of charge for that bigger battery, because the battery is 14 kilowatt hours bigger. Here with the GLC EQ we're at 94.5 kilowatt hours. I don't quite understand it. I mean, it's not a small battery, yes, but considering this segment and also this price, later talking about the price difference, they should have gone for a battery 100 kilowatt hours plus, definitely, or maybe offer two, you know, and the one is bigger. Charging flap here, sorry, it's a little bit hidden now, is also electric, also 11 or 22 kilowatt AC. And the DC peak is 300 something, officially 330 kilowatt, but it's also harder to reach that. The plateau is also quite good, you know, as for the charging curve, and it does 22 minutes, 10 to 80% state of charge. We'll also do a concise charging test of later on of that. However, you have to say that it's a little bit longer in time, but also for a smaller battery. So battery capacity and the charging speed is better with the iX3. By the way, also very important to mention, the acceleration difference here is huge. We have 4.3 seconds, 0 to 100 kilometers an hour for the GLC EQ. And we have here 4.9 seconds for the xDrive 50 for the iX3. And one of the reasons is that the GLC EQ uses a two-speed concept, so it has two gears in that one. The first gear can be like drawn from 0 to 100 in that case, otherwise it shifts up a little bit earlier. So this one here has AMG-alike acceleration figures. That's very interesting to know. Then, this by the way, the GLC 400 4MATIC, so both are all-wheel drive, one electric motor in the rear, one electric motor in the front. All right, first charging stop after about 400 kilometers, 250 miles. This one is capable of 350 kilowatt, so the station should not be the limiting factor for the vehicle. Let's see what we can score, also about 10 to 80% state of charge. And you can see here from the inside of the vehicle, already got some percent in, and here at 250 kilowatt, so good start already. By the way, here it says Ursachen, is the German for like the reasons for that. Here the car says at the moment that the charging station would be the limiting factor, so that the car could actually do more. It always depends, you know, yeah. It's really hard to find out always. And here that's very interesting, you can see it in detail. So here the car said it could at this moment charge 280 kilowatt, and it does about 250, and it blames the charging station for that. I mean, it wouldn't be the biggest difference though, but still interesting to know. 55% state of charge and still holding the 200 kilowatts, so the charging curve there seems pretty flat. Now closing into 80% and it's still at 132 kilowatts. So overall, I think good average. Let's see how many minutes we could score 12 to 80%. 80% is done, and we couldn't actually check, like the car doesn't give any statistics afterwards, sadly. And at the charging station, the monitor was broken, so we couldn't check the monitor at the charging station. The only thing why we now exactly knew, but when like manual watched the clock before, or the watch, and also in the Mercedes Me app, it gave like a note in the smartphone, hey, like for like 22 minutes ago you started charging. So that's why we know it took 22 minutes. That's exactly the official figure, 10 to 80% as promised.
Quick, yeah.
This is quick.
We're happy
decent.
about it.
And what also worked very well here is plug and charge.
Yeah.
So I didn't even hold the charging card. I just plugged in and
Perfectly,
like
yeah.
the car is registered like in the background to that, and it directly started charging. That was very easy. And you've maybe already seen our iX3 charging test, where it directly jumped to 400 kilowatts. And then we took some 18 minutes from 15 to 80% state of charge. So as I said, a couple of minutes quicker, whereas the battery is also larger. So this point clearly goes to the iX3. Now to the final conclusion. Which one should you pick and which one would we actually go for? And Yeah, due to the bigger battery and also a little bit better efficiency, the iX3 leads this segment. However, there's a big surprise, naming that the GLC EQ, that the difference in efficiency and real-world range is smaller the faster you drive. Why is that? It has the air suspension that goes down at higher speeds and also the two-speed gear concept. There, the second gear basically plays out its efficiency advantage at higher speeds. And that's why then the difference is shrinking. There is still a difference though. So now we test it at about almost 30 degrees Celsius, so almost 90 degrees Fahrenheit. These are great, even though the AC is using energy, these are great conditions because the air density is low, there's less resistance when driving. And that's why we have great figures here today at 100 kilometers an hour, 60 miles an hour, 15 kilowatt hours on 100 kilometers for the iX3, 4.1 miles per kilowatt hour, and 130 kilometers an hour or 80 miles an hour, there 20 kilowatt hours on 100 kilometers or 3.1 miles per kilowatt hour for the iX3, means a real world range of 725 kilometers or 450 miles at that 100 kilometers an hour speed, and at that 130 kilometers an hour, 80 miles an hour speed, 545 kilometers or 340 miles. Very, very good figures. And how does the GLC compare to that? So at this 100 kilometers an hour, 60 miles, we had 18 kilowatt hours or 3.45 miles per kilowatt hour. So 3 kilowatt hours more. So slightly more, yes. And that means a real range of 525 kilometers or 330 miles at that speed. Means at that 100 kilometers an hour, like slower speed, we have a range difference of 200 kilometers an hour or 125 miles an hour. So clearly, best range on a single charge, there the iX3 clearly leads it. At 130 kilometers an hour, however, 80 miles an hour, there the consumption was 21 kilowatt hours on 1 kilometers or 3 miles per kilowatt hour. Real world range, 450 kilometers or 280 miles. Then the difference here between these two shrinks to 100 kilometers or 60 miles at that higher speed. So that means on the German Autobahn, where we can often drive these higher speeds, the range difference is not that large, but when you think of US highways or inner city driving, there the range difference will be very, very significant. Makes the choice even tougher indeed. With the GLC EQ, when I drove really fast, I mean, I even tested 160 kilometers an hour, so like 100 miles per hour, and that was like 31 kilowatt hours on 1 kilometers, which is astonishing, like exponentially going up, you know, because the wind resistance is like, you know, quadruple. But it's crazy. So this one here is crazy efficient. The faster you drive, you know, in relation to other electric vehicles, and the iX3 really makes sense when you have a lot of city driving, a lot of, you know, maybe like, let's say, US highway speeds maximum, but for German Autobahn, then the GLC EQ really plays out its advantage. Yeah, and that gives us then the overall summary. Design, you can always argue what's your personal preference, but the riding itself is much more comfortable with the GLC EQ because more silent with the insulated windows, also better dampened, let's say, against sunlight with the lamination in the windows. And also the air suspension ride is so much more sophisticated. The rear axle steering also helps a lot. And this efficiency, especially at higher speeds, on the cost of that the battery is smaller than with the iX3. So the iX3 has the bigger battery, a little bit quicker charging, feels maybe a little bit more connected to the driver. However, the riding then is definitely rougher from a suspension, but you should go for the comfort seat, then you have the best seating overall. Yeah, and then summing up, it's really tough to say because I love both vehicles and I would take both in a heartbeat, and there still goes recommendation out to both of them. However, bottom line, when you are willing to pay the extra price, that's 10,000 euro extra, and that can also mean a couple of €100 more in the leasing rate, then the GLC EQ would be mine, also our favorite pick here today, because that air suspension comfort and also the calmness at higher speeds from the better noise insulation and so on was really the convincing factor that we would say, hey, especially in Germany where we go also at least 130 kilometers an hour on the motorway, then the range difference is shrinking a little bit and we could actually live with that. Nevertheless, considering the battery size, it's still a good deal and it's a great ride, the iX3. And when they soon offer the seat ventilation and also the adaptive suspension, it becomes even better. And you also have to think about that this one here has the 130 km/h hands-off, and the assistance system application is the best overall on the market at the moment in iX3 and i3, and soon also in the iX5, for example. Whereas here with the assistance systems, Mercedes are good, but not on the level like BMW is. And soon we also expect that they maybe also add then this hands-free feature. So you can see both have their distinctive feature, but the overall winner for us today is the GLC EQ. But doesn't mean that we still would also recommend the iX3, no doubt about that. The Volvo EX60 we have soon also portrayed for you. We also await your comments which pair we should compare next. Maybe Volvo EX60 against iX3 or GLC EQ. So check that one out. And of course, the fourth in this pair could be a Porsche Macan, but also an Audi Q6 e-tron.